The morning after the shooting, Dennis Reeves stood in the frost-covered pasture, surrounded by the bodies of his slaughtered alpacas. A military SUV pulled up, and Major Louise Nguyen stepped out with Captain Davis. 14 of the 60-head herd were gone. The fine wool, destined for U.S. Army cold-weather deer, was now matted with blood.
They killed 14, Major. 14.
Mr. Reeves, I am here for the fiber contract. This is a direct threat to our cold weather trials. Do you have the paperwork?
Before Dennis could answer, a white Range Rover screeched to a halt. Angela Prescott stormed across the field, her magenta sweater a splash of color against the frost.
Finally, someone did something about your freaky llamas. They've been a menace.
Dennis slowly straightened, unfolding the crumpled document in his hand. The U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps seal caught the morning light.
That's an Army contract? No, that can't be.
Hold on. What's this about a military contract?
These animals were under a federal supply agreement. Destroying them is a felony, ma'am.
3 months earlier, the Reeves Ranch had hummed with the quiet industry of 60 alpacas grazing under a wide Colorado sky.
Mary would have loved this morning. The sun on the wool. Patton at the gate. Like a prayer, she always said.
His late wife, Mary, had founded the herd 5 years earlier, breeding for fiber and something more.
These animals are going to change lives, Dennis. Not just wool healing. I can feel it.
The Army's Natick Soldier Center had selected Reeves fiber for their next-gen cold weather gear trials. A classified contract. Major Nguyen had personally delivered the agreement, calling the fiber's insulation properties revolutionary.
Those dirty beasts spit on my grandson. They're a public nuisance, and I will not rest until they're gone.
The next day, an official HOA violation notice landed, citing unpermitted livestock and threatening $500 daily fines.
Major, the HOA president is trying to shut us down. Can they do that?
Major Nguyen's reply was immediate. The federal contract superseded any local ordinance. The herd was protected. Angela's Facebook post read, "Someone finally needs to do something about those freaky llamas before they hurt a child." The official HOA violation notice arrived the next morning, demanding immediate removal of all alpacas under penalty of daily $500 fines.
They're not stopping, Rebecca. The fines, the rumors about the kids, the anonymous calls, they're trying to bury me.
The Army contract gives you federal protection, Dennis, but we need to fight this in the court of public opinion. Don't let her control the narrative.
Major, the HOA president is rallying the whole neighborhood. Even with the contract, she's making my life hell. If this keeps up, someone might get hurt.
That night, as Dennis's warning echoed, Kyle Prescott sat in his dim bedroom, his mother's voice ringing louder in his ears.
Mom's right. The law won't do anything about those animals. It's up to someone with guts.
He rose, crossed to the gun cabinet, and pulled out the bolt-action hunting rifle his grandfather had given him.
Just a few shots. End the problem. They're not even real livestock, just freaky llamas.
He loaded the rifle, slipped out the back door, and vanished into the night. Under a thin moon, Kyle Prescott crept along the fence line of the Reeves Ranch, the bolt-action rifle, cold in his hands. He raised the rifle, and the first shot cracked the silence. Alpacas scattered, their screams piercing the night, shot after shot. He fired 14 rounds, and one by one, the terrified animals crumpled to the frozen ground. He snapped a photo of the carnage, then sprinted back through the trees, his breath ragged in the cold. His phone screen glowed as he typed a message to his mother. Done. Dawn broke cold and gray. Dennis walked out with a bucket of feed, then froze, the bucket slipping from his hand.
My God. What happened? Patton, no.
He collapsed beside the lead alpaca. The braided halter Mary had made still around its neck, her name stitched into the leather.
Please, someone shot my animals. 14 of them. Send help.
Within the hour, Major Nguyen was speeding toward the ranch, The Army's classified contract on the line. The military SUV braked hard at the ranch gate. Major Nguyen and Captain Davis strode into the pasture, their faces hardening at the sight of the slaughtered herd.
This is a direct attack on a Department of Defense asset. Someone is going to answer for this.
Deputy Hartley, who had arrived moments earlier, noticed a paper pinned to a fence post, its embossed seal catching the light. He pulled it free and read aloud. Us Army Quartermaster Corps. Fiber Supply Contract. Classified. Natick Soldier Center Cold Weather Trial.
They weren't just livestock, Deputy. This herd was producing material for our soldiers' survival gear, a direct threat to national defense.
Those freaky llamas finally got what they deserved. Good riddance.
Then she saw the document in Hartley's hand, the embossed Army seal, the words Federal Contract, and the color drained from her face.
That's a federal contract? No, there's been a mistake. Those were just livestock.
Ma'am, interfering with a military contract is a federal crime. If you know who did this, you need to speak now.
Deputy Hartley got on his radio, his voice tight. The next call would bring the FBI back at her house. Angela Prescott's fingers flew across her phone, deleting her Facebook post, but the screen refreshed. Someone had already screenshotted it.
They can't prove I told anyone to do this. I just said someone should. That's not a crime.
FBI forensics teams swept the pasture, collecting 14 shell casings and dusting the fence for prints. The casings matched a rifle registered to Kyle Prescott. Cell tower data placed Kyle's phone near the ranch at the time of the shooting. The FBI had enough for an arrest. That afternoon, Kyle Prescott was pulled out of a friend's basement, his hoodie still smelling of gunpowder.
I didn't do anything. This is a setup.
The message on his phone was damning. Done. Sent to his mother right after the shooting. Screenshots of Angela's original post spread like wildfire. Comment sections filled with demands for her arrest. That evening, FBI agents knocked on Angela Prescott's door with a warrant for conspiracy. She was led away in handcuffs.
How did those freaky llamas lead to this? It was just supposed to be a nuisance complaint.
At the preliminary hearing, Kyle Prescott's attorney argued that his client was a victim of his mother's relentless pressure, not a criminal mastermind. In the courtroom, Kyle's lawyer painted a picture of a young man brainwashed by his mother's social media campaign against the animals.
She kept saying someone should do something. She told me the law wouldn't act. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood.
Angela's own attorney tried to distance her from her son's actions, but the screenshots of her original post were already public.
The Army wants to honor these animals. They were more than livestock. They were serving our soldiers. We're producing a tribute video.
If it helps people understand what Mary built, I'll do it. They were her legacy.
The Army Public Affairs team filmed quietly the next morning, capturing Dennis among the surviving herd, his voice breaking as he spoke of Patton. National media outlets picked up the story. Headlines framed it as a clash between an HOA bully and a grieving farmer with a secret military contract. The Army's tribute video, when released, would remind the nation that these animals had no voice, but their wool would have kept soldiers alive. In the gallery, a man in a suit with a VFW pin watched intently. Charles Brennan had spent a decade advocating for veterans' rights, and he recognized something no one else had yet. A pre-trial hearing began the following week. Dennis Reeves took the stand, his voice steady, but his hands gripping the rail.
Mary raised Patton from a cria. He was her favorite, the one she'd spend hours with, braiding his halter.
Angela's attorney shot to his feet. Objection. Relevance. This is a criminal case, not a eulogy. The judge leaned forward. Overruled. The value of the animals goes directly to the severity of the offense.
She believed they weren't just for wool. She felt God put them here to mend something broken in people.
Angela shifted in her seat, her magenta sweater replaced by a prison jumpsuit, her jaw tight as Dennis's words filled the silent courtroom. The gallery, packed with reporters and a few veterans, sat motionless. A woman in the back wiped her eyes. Dennis pulled a worn leather journal from his jacket. Mary's handwriting. He didn't open it, just held it up. This was her dream. Charles Brennan leaned toward the man beside him and whispered, "That animal wasn't just a pet. I've seen these records before." The prosecution rested, but the case had already shifted from criminal mischief to something far more profound. 2 days after the hearing, Dennis's phone rang. On the line was General Morrison, a retired Army officer who had been quietly tracking the case.
Mr. Reeves, you don't know me, but your Alpaca Patton was a licensed service animal. He spent 2 years helping veterans at the Denver VA.
Morrison revealed that Mary had kept the certification secret, only registering Patton after his first visit with a shell-shocked young corporal.
That animal saved lives, Mr. Reeves. I've got 23 veterans who can testify to what he meant to them.
She did it. She actually made her dream real. Patton was more than I ever knew.
Within hours, Charles Brennan stood beside Morrison, holding a copy of Patton's license, and filed a civil suit for damages.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars is seeking $2.4 million for the emotional trauma inflicted on our veterans by the loss of this service animal.
The lawsuit listed each veteran by name, attaching their therapy records and sworn statements about Patton's impact on their recovery. Angela's lawyer immediately filed an appeal, but the court froze her assets pending judgment. The house, the SUV, every dollar.
All because I called them freaky llamas. Now they'll take everything I have.
News of the service animal lawsuit broke nationally. The next morning, the Denver VA hospital cafeteria fell silent as televisions aired the story. Sergeant Kate Miller took the stand first, her hands trembling as she described the first time Patton rested his head on her knee after a flashback.
I hadn't spoken to anyone in days, but that animal just looked at me like he knew. He brought me back.
Corporal James Yao followed, describing how Patton stood utterly still during his panic attacks, the alpaca's soft wool grounding him in reality. Social media timelines flipped overnight. The hashtag Justice for Patton trended, and Angela's name became a symbol of callous entitlement. Kyle's criminal proceedings resumed under a heavy cloud of public scrutiny, his lawyer now not just pleading manipulation but outright condemning Angela's influence.
She told me those animals were dangerous. I thought I was helping. I didn't know. I am sorry.
Dennis sat in the front row, gripping Mary's journal as tears cut tracks down his face. Each veteran's testimony peeled back another layer of shared grief.
Mary, you didn't just raise alpacas. You raised hope, and now the whole world sees it.
The criminal and civil trials were now set to run concurrently, a dual reckoning that would test the very meaning of justice for a grieving rancher and a nation of veterans. Kyle Prescott's criminal sentencing was swift. 5 years for felony animal cruelty, a sentence his attorney immediately appealed.
5 years in prison, because I believed her. They weren't just pests.
Outside the courtroom, Angela's lawyer floated a settlement, $500,000 to make the civil suit disappear.
$500,000 to silence 23 veterans. That's an insult, not an offer.
We won't settle. She needs to face what she destroyed. This was Mary's dream.
The veterans in the gallery nodded. The trial would go forward. No matter the cost, jury selection stretched into a second day. Opening statements laid bare the raw grief of service members robbed of a lifeline. The judge delivered final instructions. The civil trial now rested entirely in the hands of 12 strangers.
Mary, we didn't want this fight, but I won't let them erase what you built.
The jury filed out to deliberate. A suffocating silence fell over the courthouse, heavy with unbearable hope. As the jury deliberated, Dennis returned to the silent farmhouse. A letter with a prison return address was waiting on the table. He unfolded the crumpled paper. Kyle had written, "I believed my mother because I wanted to be a good son. I am sorry for what I did."
So he finally sees it. But knowing doesn't bring Patton back.
Dennis pulled Mary's journal from the shelf and turned to the day she first took Patton to the VA. Her handwriting was steady. Today, Patton met a young Marine who hadn't spoken in weeks. Patton laid his head in his lap for an hour. The Marine cried. So did I. He drove to the cemetery as dusk fell. the journal heavy in his hands.
He was more than you ever told me, wasn't he? I wish we'd had more time.
He knelt and traced her name, the grief finally cracking the dam of rage. Back home at the kitchen table, he wrote a reply. 4 words. I forgive you.
Mary would have wanted that. Justice is still coming, but the hatred has to end.
After 7 days of deliberation, word spread. The jury had reached a verdict. The courthouse buzzed as the courtroom filled for the final hour. Dennis Reeves took his seat in the front row, the journal resting in his lap. Angela Prescott was led in last.
Please, Your Honor, I've lost everything already. Have mercy.
The judge did not look up from his papers. The jury will decide. Take your seat. The jury filed in one by one, their faces unreadable. The foreperson clutched a folded verdict form.
This is it, Mary. Whatever they decide, we already won the part that mattered.
The judge asked the foreperson to stand and read the verdict.
Whatever it is, I am ready. We did what you would have wanted.
The foreperson unfolded the paper. A pin-drop silence pressed against every chest in the room. And then the first number left his lips. The night before the verdict, Dennis couldn't sleep. He sat alone in the dark farmhouse, the Army's tribute video flickering on the screen. The video showed soldiers saluting and photos of fallen alpacas, a voiceover calling them patriots with wool. But all Dennis saw was Mary.
Promise me, Dennis. When this is over, let the hatred go. Heal yourself. That's what Patton would want.
He pulled a notepad and scratched out a statement for tomorrow, no matter the outcome.
Patton gave peace to veterans. I won't dishonor him with bitterness. Mary's dream lives on in the survivors.
At first light, he climbed into his Silverado, the journal resting on the passenger seat.
Today, the whole world learns what you did, Mary, and I'll make sure they remember.
He drove toward the courthouse as the town stirred, coffee shops opening, oblivious to the reckoning ahead. He parked and sat for a long moment, the engine ticking, watching the sun climb over the pillars.
I'm ready.
The foreperson's voice cut through the silence. We, the jury, award the plaintiffs $2.4 million in punitive damages. Angela Prescott's legs buckled. She collapsed against the defendant's table, a guttural cry echoing through the room.
Number, the house. Everything. It's all gone.
Mary, we did it. Your dream just became a weapon against cruelty.
Dennis turned and shook Charles Brennan's hand, his grip trembling. In the gallery, veterans wept openly, some clutching photographs of Patton.
This is a victory for every veteran who ever found solace in an animal's presence.
Outside the courthouse, Kate Miller and James Yao embraced, the crowd cheering. The hashtag Justice for Patton trended again. The judge banged her gavel, ordering immediate seizure of Angela's assets. The Prescott name was now a warning.
You were worth more than wool, old friend. You were hope.
As Dennis walked into the sunset, the weight of the past months finally lifted. He smiled at the sky and whispered a single word. Within hours, federal agents arrived at the Prescott residence with a seizure order. The house that had anchored Angela's identity was now evidence.
This can't be happening. I was the HOA president. I was someone.
Her white Range Rover was hoisted onto a tow truck, personal effects scattered on the curb like discarded pride. In his cell, Kyle Prescott watched the news, the anchor explaining the $2.4 million judgment. His hands trembled.
She's lost everything. Because of me. And for what? Freaky llamas.
Dennis Reeves stood before the cameras, his voice steady but thick with emotion, ready to honor his wife's legacy one final time. Dennis's statement read, "This wasn't just about livestock. It was about honoring my late wife's dream and the veterans she loved."
The Army contract is void, but the tribute video will stand. Patton's service will never be forgotten.
By nightfall, the foreclosure sign was hammered into the lawn. Angela's empire had crumbled.
Maybe now I can start over. If Dennis can forgive, maybe I can forgive myself.
At the VFW convention, The army unveiled the tribute video. The hall fell silent as the screen lit up with soldiers and Patton.
From today, every soldier in extreme cold will wear the Patton parka. His service is woven into our defense.
Dennis stepped forward, and the room erupted in a standing ovation.
My wife believed in second chances. Patton's fund will bring therapy alpacas to VA centers nationwide, funded by the verdict.
He held up a check for the first $50,000, drawn from the settlement.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars has already identified 12 facilities where therapy alpacas will be stationed by year's end.
The banner behind them read, Patton's Fund, Healing Through Service Animals. In the audience, Kate Miller and James Yao wept tears of joy.
Mary, they're going to know your name now. Every veteran who pets a cria will know what you started.
The convention closed with a simple promise. More alpacas, more healing, more hope. In the quiet of the barn, sweeping the last of the winter hay, Dennis noticed a loose knot in the old beam where Mary used to hide her secrets. He pried it open and found a folded envelope, his name written in her steady hand, tucked away years ago. He unfolded the paper. Dennis, if you are reading this, my time is gone. But our mission isn't. Patton was a healer. His wool kept soldiers warm, but his heart kept them human. She had written, don't let the bastards take what's yours. Not just the land, the purpose. Keep going, for the veterans. For me, the letter trembled. The final line read, I love you. Now heal. Now heal.
I promise.
He carefully placed the letter in the trunk of her mementos, beside a photograph of their wedding day. The weight he'd carried since that frozen morning finally lifted. For the first time in months, Dennis breathed without pain.
We did it, Mary. We really did it.
He stepped out of the barn, into the golden light, the surviving herd grazing in the distance, and started toward the pasture. 6 months later, the ranch breathed again. Dennis walked the fence line at sunrise, a young cria trotting at his heels. The cria was from Patton's line, a filly with the same steady eyes, born exactly 7 months after the darkest morning.
You look like your father. Gentle, patient. Mary would have named you something noble.
The herd had grown. Survivors of that night, now stronger, their wool destined for a new contract already in negotiation.
We did it. The fund, the parka, the new cria. None of it brings you back, but it brings you forward.
He knelt and scratched the cria's head, a gesture Mary had taught him, and for a moment, the pasture felt full of her presence. The new barn stood where the old one had burned in the trauma, but the spirit inside was older than any beam.
Your dream is alive, Mary. Every cria, every veteran we help, every sunrise over this land, it's all still you.
The sun crested the ridge, flooding the valley with gold, and the alpacas lifted their heads as if in quiet salute. And Dennis walked on. The future opened before him. A small alpaca trotting at his side, Dennis stopped at the spot where he had found Patton's body, now marked by a simple wooden cross and a halter draped over it. He knelt, fingers brushing the halter, and the cria nuzzled his shoulder as if to say he understood.
You started it all, old friend, and she finished it. I just held the line.
The nickname Angela had spat in contempt. Freaky llamas had become a badge of honor, woven into every Patton parka and every veteran's smile. He straightened and looked toward the distant mountains, where the sun had fully risen, chasing away the last ghosts of that freezing dawn.
She would have loved this. The herd, the fund, the parka, all of it.
The cria tugged at his pant leg, impatient for their morning rounds, and Dennis laughed, a sound the valley hadn't heard in years. He gave the cross one last touch, then walked on, the cria bounding ahead, and the herd followed as they had always followed Mary. In the distance, a news banner on his phone lit up. Patton Parka saves troops in Arctic drills.
From freaky llamas to national heroes. Mary, we really did it.
6 months after the verdict, A manila envelope arrived from General Morrison. Inside was a report. Patton's fund now operated 50 therapy alpacas across 12 states. The attached study showed a 40% reduction in veteran PTSD symptoms after 6 sessions with therapy alpacas.
Your dream went national, Mary, from shearing wool to healing souls.
He pinned the letter beside her nursing photo, next to the halter she'd braided for Patton. Now, a quiet shrine in the barn's corner. Outside, twilight settled over the ranch, painting the herd in shades of lavender and gold. The survivors had grown strong.
I used to think justice was about punishment, but this, new life, new purpose, that's what you meant.
The cria, now nearly full-grown, nuzzled his hand, and Dennis scratched the spot behind its ear that always made it lean into him. He turned toward the cross on the hill, now surrounded by wildflowers that grew without planting, a final gift from the earth. A veteran, in a Patton parka, had left a note earlier. Your llamas saved more lives than bullets ever took.
They were never just llamas. They were never just wool. They were the beginning of something bigger than any of us.
The ranch lay quiet under a fading sky. Dennis stood at the fence, watching the herd settle for the night. The cria, now a sturdy juvenile, pressed against his leg, a living thread to Patton's bloodline. Inside the barn, the little shrine of halter, nursing cap, and photo caught the last light. A new army contract for ethically sourced wool was in the works, but Dennis no longer measured success in yards of fiber.
Every time a veteran smiles, every time a cria takes its first steps, you are here, Mary.
The wildflowers around the cross had spread. The hill, now a gentle riot of color. He touched the halter one last time, then stepped back, leaving it where it belonged. The herd lifted their heads. Some of them, the grandchildren of that frozen morning. Dennis turned toward the barn, the cria trotting ahead, and the porch light was on.
They are everything, and I am home.